Hi, and welcome to the July edition of Patchwatch. The mute swan family, filmed over the last few episodes, have now moved off the patch and have gone further downstream on the river. I haven't seen them myself, but they are reportedly still doing well. The hot weather we had in June has continued on into July and has lasted until just before the end of the month when some much needed rain arrived. There has also been a noticeable change with the wildlife. At the start of the month, swifts were still present and many birds were still singing. Good numbers of high summer insects were present mid-month, but it had all changed at the end of the month with the swifts gone already, all the birds have fallen silent and the insects much reduced in numbers. The hot weather has encouraged the flying ants to take to the air. This event is synchronised across the country every year, with every colony taking flight on the same day, and it has formally been called Flying Ant Day, which is when the next generation of queen ants take their nuptial flights to find and mate with the males, who have also taken to the air. Many different species have learned to take full advantage of this glut of easy food, including these black-headed gulls that can be seen hawking the ants over by the wood. The small chalk river that runs through the patch is mostly used by the tamish mallards, who will swim over to you in the expectation of being fed. Moorhen also use the river and a number breed along the edges. It looks clear of vegetation throughout most of the year, but it changes its face in the high summer and becomes full of water plants such as this arrowhead, which is named after distinctly shaped leaves, and this unbranched burreed. The emergent vegetation attracts a wide variety of insects that use it in various different ways. But there is one spectacular insect that has recently started to occur in this part of the river that stands head and shoulders above the rest. If you stand on the riverbank in July, you might be lucky enough to see a quick blur of movement over the vegetation. These are male banded demoiselles defending their territories and jostling for position to mate with a female when one arrives. If you are patient enough, one might come for a brief rest in front of you and show you what a stunning insect the males are. The females aren't quite as showy as the males and lack the dark wing markings. As I was filming the demoiselles, I was drawn to some odd behaviour of a male, flicking its wings and making short, darting flights. As I watched, I realised it was protecting the female just in front of him as she was ovipositing her eggs into the vegetation. The female then flew to some vegetation in the middle of the river to continue ovipositing by herself, and then, much to my amazement, proceeded to submerge herself completely underwater to deposit her eggs further down the stem. I knew that they did this, but this is the first time I've ever witnessed this behaviour. The eggs will take about 14 days to hatch, and then the larva will make its way down to the muddy bottom of the river to live amongst the roots of the vegetation for the next 2 years, before it emerges back out of the water to become an adult. Whilst it is great to see these spectacular insects making use of the vegetation, it is unfortunately all in vain, as the vegetation is always dredged out by the end of the month, destroying all the eggs before they have any chance of developing. Out on the marsh, ragwort has come into full flower. Much maligned for being harmful to livestock when mixed with hay, ragwort plays an important role for the wildlife. It is one of the most important nectar providers for bees and other insects. In fact, there are at least 77 species of insect that use ragwort exclusively as a food source or a home, and at least another 22 species where it is a significant food source. It is much loved by hoverflies, including this marmalade hoverfly. This is one of the commonest hoverflies there is, and they can be seen all year round if it is warm enough. It gets its name from the different thicknesses of the bands on the abdomen, which is a unique feature and makes this hoverfly easily identifiable. Many different species of bee also use ragwort as a food source. This one is the vestal cuckoo bumblebee, which lays its eggs in the nest of the buff-tailed bumblebee. They leave their eggs to be looked after by the hosts and don't need to provision them with pollen, so they don't have the pollen baskets that a true bumblebee will have. One of the best known insects that depend on ragwort is the cinnabar moth. Whilst they use other plants for breeding, cinnamoths mainly use ragwort as a food plant for their caterpillars. Most caterpillars are either well camouflaged or hide up out of sight, but these caterpillars feed freely out in the open. They can do this because ragwort contains a number of toxins which the caterpillar is able to tolerate and then store, making it poisonous to any predators, and it advertises this fact with the bright colours. Even when it pupates and becomes an adult moth, it will still contain the toxins it built up as a caterpillar. I even found this small skipper nectaring on the ragwort. They are very similar to the Essex skipper that can also be found on the patch, the only difference between the two being the colour of the underside of the tip of the antenna. Small skipper have orange on the underside and the Essex is completely black, so a close inspection is needed to tell these two species apart. The plant on the edge of the copse looks innocent enough at a distance, but a closer look reveals it is a deadly nightshade. It is a beautiful looking plant with lovely purple bell-shaped flowers and is another plant that attracts many insects, but every part of the plant is poisonous if eaten, especially the berries. These ones aren't ripe yet, but when they are a beautiful shiny dark purple and even look quite juicy. It is said they actually taste really nice and they are quite moreish, but the more you eat, the more poison you ingest and the more deadly they become. They shouldn't cause a problem if left alone though, and it has a great benefit for the wildlife. I came across a group of scorpion flies whilst walking through the wood. These strange looking insects have two pairs of wings, so they don't belong to the true flies which only have one pair. They actually belong to a completely different group of insects altogether, which have been around for much longer than the flies, bees and wasps. They look quite alarming but are completely harmless, and use their strange looking beaks to feed on dead insects, and they're even quite adept at stealing the catch from a spider's web. They are called scorpion flies because of the rear end of the male looks like it has a stinger, just like a real scorpion, but it is actually a clasp bird to hold females when mating. The males will form groups and display to attract a female, but mating can be a tricky business as a female can end up eating the male afterwards, so the males will often present the females with a gift food package in the hope of missing out on a grisly ending. Immediately next to the scorpion flies, a brambles in flower and has become yet another food source for even more insects, including the soldier beetle, so named because they were thought to resemble the distinctive red tunics worn by the army at the time. This particularly hot day in July saw the brambles swarming with butterflies. Green vein white drops in and starts nectaring on the flowers. This species is often mistakenly called a cabbage white, but it is the large white and the small white that are the gardener's enemy number one. A ringlet, one of the commonest high summer butterflies on the patch, also makes an appearance. A thistle just below the bramble was used as a spot to soak up the sun by a comma. As I was filming the comma, something caught my eye as it flew past. I turned around and found a white admiral in all its splendour had joined the bramble melee. They were quite a scarce species not so long ago, but have recently started to expand their range, for reasons nobody quite understands yet, and were first recorded in the wood as recently as 2010. And that is all for this month. Thank you for watching and please hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date with the latest news from the